told me if it is, but I assume it is. So, Jeremy, it's fantastic to see you here. Thank you so much for coming, Jeremy. I'll come back to that in a moment. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm just... OK, so maybe I'm a bit out of practice with this stuff. That's fine. So, yeah, Jeremy and I were just talking about Latin America, actually. I've just been to Southampton in the last 24 hours, of all places, with special permission from Jeremy. My wife's from Honduras, and her brother works on cruise ships. So he happened to be in Southampton port today. So we went down last night and to stay over, and then we've been seeing him this morning. So I had to cut my visit slightly short because I had one or two other pressing engagements up here in Pudsey, but it was great to see my Latin American friends, and I know Jeremy and I have a shared interest in Latin America, so that was really good. So meanwhile, while I've been dashing up the motorway from Southampton, Jeremy has been doing something slightly more pressing. He's been launching our fantastic manifesto. Absolutely. And I have to say that after 20 years of active involvement in this party, this is a manifesto that is absolutely these things that I have been arguing for years within the party. These are exactly the policies that we need to be going with. We'll come back some other time to nuclear disarmament. Jeremy and I will try and persuade the party again on that one, but on the other points, the party is absolutely united behind this programme. Certainly from speaking to people here in Pudsey, our policies are really gaining traction, and it's fantastic to have a set of policies which are absolutely all about making a genuine, real difference to the lives of people, not just here in Pudsey, but up and down this country. And it's fantastic that Jeremy has led that process in this party, and that we are back with genuine socialist policies that will make a real substantial difference in the country. So, absolutely brilliant. So, thank you very much for that as Principal Joe. Just in terms of some of the specifics of that, obviously the first overwhelming issue affecting us is the economic crisis, and we've got policies that are going to deal with that, sort out the problems of infrastructure in this country, and really get our economy working again. And the whole issue about the deficit will sort itself out once our economy is properly working again. So that's absolutely vital, and John McDonnell has done a brilliant job on that stuff. So we congratulate everybody for that. Secondly, on the disaffection of young people, I think I've talked to various groups of you about this over the past few weeks and days in Pudsey. People who feel cut off from the political process, people who think that politics doesn't make a difference for them. We know that politics does make a genuine, real difference. And one example of that is our policy for rental arrangements for young people. So we know that when I was 20 years ago, when I was about 25 or so, it was very straightforward, even to buy. Jeremy was a similar age to me, by the way. It was easy to buying a house was fairly straightforward, even on a relatively low wage. And even in those 20 years, Jeremy, the world has gone backwards. And now my daughter, who's 21, she can't even conceive of the idea of renting at the moment. That's how bad things are. And it's fantastic that we've got really solid, decent policies about proper rental housing for our young people. And I look forward to the Labour Party implementing those policies. And that's exactly the sort of thing we need to be doing. So thank you again, Jeremy, for that one. That's absolutely brilliant. And finally, just to mention another specific one about rebuilding our public services. I've been having some interesting debates about education here in Pudsey constituency with my Tory opponent. He and I have a slight difference of opinion about the subject, but anyway, I was at one of our high schools the other day where they were having nearly a 10% loss of budget over a 4-year period from 2015 to 2019. And his best response was to say, well, maybe in 2019 it won't be quite as bad as we're saying it's going to be. So clearly the Tories have no policies on that, and that's one of the issues that we will be addressing with our new policies on school funding. So that's brilliant. And secondly, of course, on the National Health Service, our party's greatest achievement. So proud of that achievement. We are the party of the National Health Service. It's fantastic that the National Health Service is centre stage in our policies, in our consciousness and in our publicity. It's absolutely fantastic, and I really appreciate the fact that we put so much emphasis on that. Mental health is obviously vitally important. It's brilliant that we're giving that its due attention, so thank you for stressing that, Jeremy. That is really good. And of course, adult social care. Adult social care is a thing that comes up on the doorstep all the time, along with all the other issues I've already mentioned, but adult social care comes up as an issue all the time on the doorstep, and it's brilliant that we're going to be bringing in decent policies to actually sort that out once and for all properly with the National Care Service. So that's fantastic. So that's just some of the policies that we've launched some of the policies that people have been talking to me about all across this constituency. We've got quite a varied constituency here with lots of different bits of it, from basically inner city bits to sort of posh rural bits and bits in between. So it's a bit of a microcosm of Britain. But what we've also got here is a very, very strong local Pudsey constituency Labour Party, and I've had fantastic support from everybody here with my campaign, and we're bringing all the party together. And it's with real pride that I stand as candidate here for the Labour Party, and it's obviously the honour of my life, and I'm absolutely delighted to be doing that. I'm also proud to be representing the wider Labour movement. I'm standing as a Cooperative Party candidate as well, and I'm very proud to have the support of the Cooperative Party. I know building more cooperatives is part of our policy. I'd like to see lots more cooperatives. So my family are fifth-generation cooperators. And long may the cooperative movement thrive and flourish. So that's another brilliant aspect of our policies. So more widely, I'm delighted to represent the whole Labour movement in this election. I do think that public opinion is changing. We live in radical times at the moment with lots and lots of massive shifts in public opinion, and all sorts of things can happen, and expect the unexpected. So we will see what happens over the next few weeks. Jeremy, I'm entirely confident that we will get a good result in this election, both here in Pudsey and across the country. And thank you very much for coming today, Jeremy. Thank you.
Ian, thank you very much for what you've just said and your commitment to this constituency. And can I present you duly signed, autographed copy of For the Many, Not the Few. Ian. Signed. You read it now. When I finish my talk, I'll question you on it. We'll do a comprehension test, all right? No, you won't. Thanks very much. And I really appreciate what you said at the end about the co-op and the co-op as being part of our Labour movement. I can remember my mum's co-op number.
My mum remembers her grandma's co-op number.
Oh, God, okay. Any great-grandmothers' co-op numbers known here? Great-great-grandmothers? Anything else? Come on, yes. Can I say thanks for being here this afternoon, and thank you for inviting me along. This is, I think, the 41st or 42nd election event I've done since this campaign began, and it's all over the country we're doing it. And it's like having two campaigns, actually. You read the national papers and you read the cynicism with which many people judge elections and judge how policies are put forward and developed. And then you do something different. You go out and talk to people, you go out to our party events, and you see in our crowds a microcosm of our society. And you see in our crowds a sense of hope, a sense of optimism, and a sense of determination that we can do things differently in this country. And we now have until June the 8th to get that message across. And so the first thing is to make sure everybody's registered to vote. In the last election, of those under 25 voted who were eligible to, and there were possibly as many as 2 million not registered to vote. We've mounted a huge voter registration campaign, and lots of other people in completely independent organisations have been doing the same, and it's had a very big effect. More than 1 million people registered in the first couple of weeks since the election was called. There are still people out there who are going to rue the day they weren't able to vote on June the 8th because they didn't register by May the 22nd. So every door you knock on, everybody you meet, everybody you talk to at any time, just ask them the question, are you registered to vote? If you're not, help them do it. It takes less time than it does to boil a kettle and make a cup of tea. I think 2 minutes to get a vote is something worthwhile. After all, how did our democracy happen? How did it come about in our society? Was it not people all over this country, in the East End of London, in Yorkshire, in Lancashire, in Scotland, who laid down their lives that we might be able to vote to live in a democratic society? And so it's always worth remembering where our history comes from, and I'm sure you're going to do that, and your campaign you're going to mount in support of Ian, because we need Ian to be elected in order to get that majority in Parliament, in order, hold it up please, thank you very much, yes, very good, in order to put what's in this manifesto into practice. There are lots of details in the manifesto of things we're going to do, and I'll mention those in a moment. But I just say, for openers, every single one of the spending pledges in it, and there are spending pledges in it, is absolutely clearly funded and costed and will be paid for. Because we are determined not to increase taxation on low or middle income earners. 95% of the population will not pay any more in income tax, VAT or national insurance, but instead will get the benefits of the areas that we want to invest in for the future. Those with the broadest shoulders, those big corporations and those that seem to prefer to place their money in the Cayman Islands and the British Virgin Islands and a number of other places will be politely asked instead to help invest in our public services for our future, for all of us. And talking of politeness, if the Prime Minister is able to watch this and she's got time, I'd be very happy to have a polite conversation with her about these matters. Fundamentally, an election is about the future for all of us. And in modern Britain, we have gross inequality. We have grotesque levels of inequality. Is it morally right that we walk past people who are sleeping on the streets? Is it morally right that people should lead a life begging around a railway station hoping they can get enough money to go into a night shelter? All of them have stories, all of them have lives, all of them have problems, and yet they can get nowhere to live and they end up dying on the streets or leading short lives because of the problems that they face. Surely in the fifth richest country in the world we can do a bit better than that. Surely we can. And is it right that last year 1 million points of access were made to food banks within our society, that even nurses working in our NHS are getting vouchers to use a food bank? I absolutely support and applaud and admire those people that help and work in food banks. Like all of you, we donate to food banks all the time because it's a simple human instinct. You want to help other people. But can it be really justifiable in a modern society that we have a combination of homelessness, hunger, poverty and food banks, while at the same time this government is planning to give away £60 billion in tax relief to big business and the very wealthiest over the next 5 years? That is the difference between us and a Tory government in Britain. We will not do that. And so it is about the justice that we want for the people of this country. And as Ian was pointing out, it's also our approach to the rest of the world. I'm determined to lead a government that will play its part in supporting those that are combating climate change, that are signing up to all the necessary international agreements, and develop trade and international relations policies that are about respect for human rights and democracy, and using whatever influence we have anywhere in the world to spread human rights and democracy rather than just passing by on the other side. And I want to live in a world, of peace. I want to live in a world where we support each other and don't just ignore the grotesque problems that exist around the world with so many hundreds of millions of displaced people. We have to do everything we can. A far-sighted international policy deals with the humanitarian instinct that is there in all of us. And I want to lead a government that will have that as its guiding principle. And that I'm determined to do. And it's about our education, it's about our health, it's about our housing, it's about our economy. On education, we want to increase the opportunities for preschool children to be able to enjoy socialisation, enjoy good quality preschool places, not necessarily for preschool education, but that very important social contact and social interaction, which Sure Start centres were set up to bring about. And it's this Tory government that's closing and destroying so many of our Sure Start centres. We want to develop that. And for children in primary school, I simply say this: if you come to school hungry and you haven't had a decent breakfast, or indeed any breakfast at all, you go through the school day and then you go home in the evening and you don't have much to eat, you're not going to concentrate properly, you're not going to learn very much, you're not going to do very well. And so I am absolutely determined we will make sure that every child in every primary school in England gets a free lunch every single day. Now, people say, well, children whose parents can afford it will also get the lunch. Yeah, they will. But they will also, as they do, be paying taxation to help do it. But the principle of those children settling down for lunch together every day is a message they will remember for the rest of their lives, rather than, sorry, you're entitled to free lunches, you go over here, you're having sandwiches, you go here. Hang on. It's bringing children together that is most important. And if you produced a map of Britain of the areas of biggest cuts in council expenditure, and you could say colour that red, and you just randomly, and it's just a choice, random colour, and you then produced a map of the greatest poverty in this country, and you say colour that blue, just randomly, one would overlay the other. We have a government that is systematically cutting money from the neediest, poorest areas of the country and calling it progress. They have a funding formula for our schools which reduces the amount of money spent per child in all the neediest areas of the country, and so that class sizes are rising when they should be falling, teachers are coping in some cases with supersized classes and under enormous stress, teaching assistants losing their jobs and many teachers leaving the profession because they cannot cope with the pressures and stress that are put upon them. And then the schools quite reasonably complain about this and are told, well, raise some money from the parents. Well, I'm sorry, I want an education system that is properly, publicly funded for all, so that all children, whatever the postcode where they're born or live, get the same chances in school and in life. Because underachievement is a terrible thing. It can't be right that in a modern society, a child growing up in postcode A, living relatively poor life, underfunded school, less likely to achieve, less likely to do well in secondary school, less likely to get A-levels, less likely to get B.Tech or anything else, less likely to become the doctor, the engineer, the lawyer, or whatever they want to be in the future. Two people lose as a result of that. One, obviously, that young person who hasn't been given the chances they should have been in life. And the second people who lose, every single one of us, because we've lost the ability of the talents of that person to contribute to our society and our community. I am determined we will fairly and properly fund all of our children in all of our schools, wherever they are in this country. And then you move on to the question of higher education and of further education. We held a fascinating morning at in Leeds City College last week. Angela Rayner, Becky Long-Bailey and myself in discussion with students for a very long time, and very good questions they raised as well. about the stresses, strains they were under and everything they were trying to do, but utterly determined to get on in life. And then the question comes up in discussion, would you like to go to university? They all said, yeah. And then they said they were put off by the fees, they were put off by the debt they were going to get into, and they were sort of thinking twice or three times about that. And last year, for the first time for many years, the number of working class students applying to go to university fell and continues to fall. That's why, after a lot of thought and a lot of calculations, we've decided to include in the manifesto ending student fees at universities. And somebody at lunchtime told me this was all very dangerously left-wing stuff. Well, I tell you this, you look around the world at the countries with the greatest levels of equality, with the best standards in education, with the best achievements in education. All of them fund their students through university because they realise we all benefit from an educated population. Isn't that what it's about? So I am very determined to achieve that, and I'm really proud of the work that Angela Rayner has done as our Shadow Secretary of State for Education, because she brings with it a determination brought from her own experience. She didn't do terribly well at school, she had all kinds of problems, she had a very difficult life, but she said what saved her was Sure Start. What saved her was the support she was given after leaving school through Sure Start, and there she is now, absolutely brilliant, MP, Shadow Secretary of State. I want her to be the Secretary of State for Education. And in this region, just like every other, there are huge strains and stresses around the National Health Service. There is a problem over the sustainability and transformation plans, which seem to have set up in every part of the country the most ludicrous competitions between cities and towns about who is going to not lose their A&E department. So this election was only announced a very short time ago, and I was discussing this with John Ashworth. And so what we've decided to do is, as soon as he takes office, immediately suspend all of the sustainability and transformation plans, look at the whole thing again to make sure there are accident and emergency departments within reach of everybody and an ambulance service that can cope with the needs of everybody, rather than whole areas of the country being left without them. And John will do that. And the way in which this government has underfunded our National Health Service is absolutely chronic. I, like Ian, am very, very, very proud of the principle of the National Health Service. A health service free at the point of use for everybody. A human right. It was our greatest achievement as a Labour Party. It's the most civilised thing about this country, and I'm very proud of it. Yeah. And when Nye Evans said it will last as long as there are folk around to defend it, well, we are folk and we will defend it, okay? But the pressures on accident and emergency departments come further down the line, actually. They come from overcrowded GPs, they come from the pressure on them, they come from inadequate social care, they come from an awful lot of other things in society. And so we look at health in this way. We want to properly fund our hospitals, of course. We want to better treat our GPs, of course. But we also want to look at the issue of social care. There are 1.2 million people not getting access to social care. And that means they either, if they're in a very difficult situation, remain in hospital when they should have been sent home or sent to a place of support, or they are cared for by relatives who have to give up work to look after them, usually women who give up their jobs and careers in order to care for elderly and needy relatives. It's not they don't love them, it's not that they don't want to support them. We all love our relatives and want to support them, but I think we need a system that supports them rather than throwing the whole thing back into the lottery of family life if somebody is around to care for them. And so I'm determined to achieve a social care system that works for the whole country. And when we launched our manifesto today, Brian spoke. He was a gentleman who runs a business of his own. At one level he's doing very well, and he is very good at what he does, and a very nice and very able guy. But he very bravely stood up in front of thousands of people and millions watching on television and described how his life had changed and how he had become deeply stressed and mentally ill. He didn't realize it, but he then began to notice things about his behavior and his life and the stresses that he was under. And he used the opportunity to thank us for including in our manifesto an absolutely clear commitment that when we won against the Tories in 2012 in Parliament the concept of parity of esteem between physical and mental health, we mean it, and we will fund mental health properly, and I will be appointing a Minister for Mental Health and Social Care. Because we've got to reach out. A quarter of us are going to suffer from a crisis of some sort in our lives, and you shouldn't have to wait 6 months to get any therapy. And we have to... 18 months, my goodness, that's the worst I've heard, actually. But yeah, thank you for that. And we have to deal with this issue, and I'm very determined to do so, because the stress you and others must go through with that very long wait to get here. Okay, well done, well done. Well done you for doing the best for your son. Thank you. And so I'm very, very committed on the issue of mental health. But also, can we all be committed? Not to make jokes about it, not to encourage and increase the stigma attached to it, but also reach out particularly to young people who often feel very isolated and very alone and in a very difficult place on that. We're a very big organisation, we're a very big party, we're a very big part of the community. We can all play a role in this and be strong enough to care for others. That is real strength, when you care for others. But ill health in our society comes from many things, and there is a housing crisis in Britain at the present time. I mentioned homelessness at the beginning. That's the symptom of it. The cause is actually a strategy which isn't building enough council housing, a strategy which is placing starter homes totally out of the reach of people who want to buy anywhere because they can't get access to a mortgage, can't raise a deposit, and it means that many adult children are never able to leave the family home. And much as we all love our adult children, and we all do absolutely love our adult children, sometimes we think they'd be better located elsewhere and come and visit at weekends. You know how it goes. And also for them it's a question of self-respect and wanting to move on in life. And so it does mean we've got to have a serious approach to housing. And so what we've said in the manifesto is that we want to build 1 million new homes over 5 years, half of which will be for guaranteed social rent with lifetime tenancies, council housing. Now, again, I was told this was a dangerously left-wing, really extreme thing. I mean, goodness, it's come to something when the mainstream media say building housing is a dangerous left-wing extreme thing to do. It shows just how far language has been abused in our society. Just think it through for a minute. If somebody is living in a private rented flat, and in some parts of the country paying a very high rent, in every part of the country being insecure, probably paying more on energy costs than anybody else, and many other things, and possibly having trouble getting the repairs done, and maybe their children are very insecure in school because they're moving every few months, every 6 months or a year, and so it goes on. We all lose, that all costs money. If you invest in building good quality council housing, you've got jobs for building workers, you've got jobs in the supply chain, you've got people living in secure housing, you've got children doing better in school and spending less on housing because they're not paying a private landlord, and as a country we're not spending £9 billion a year in benefits which are paid into the private rented sector. It seems to me it's an eminently sensible economic, social and humanitarian argument that I'm putting forward, and I invite our friends in the media to understand that. But it's also, this election is also about the economic opportunities we want for people in the future. We have, at the moment, a very unbalanced economy in Britain. We have far too much of government-sponsored capital investment going to London and the South East. I say that as somebody who represents a London constituency and fully understands that. It's not right that barely a tenth of that spending there goes to the North East, goes to Yorkshire, goes to the North West and other parts of the country. And so there has to be two things: a national investment bank, which we will establish, which will fund major infrastructure works, and crucially it will be regionally based, so that there is an access to capital funds in each region of England for road, rail, broadband investment, so that we can actually improve the infrastructure. There are too many places all across Britain that have seen precious little investment since the end of the coal industry, or in some places where the steel industry or other heavy industry was destroyed. We need to reverse that and invest in all those communities. And we need a government that's prepared to invest in sustainable, high-tech green industries and energy industries for the future. And that means a national investment bank that's prepared to do it. Again, all this dangerous extreme left-wing stuff, they do it in Denmark, they do it in Sweden, they do it in Norway, they do it in Germany, they do it in Italy. You could list a lot of places where they do it. What we're putting forward is something that will improve the economy of this country, that will mean young people can get good jobs on good conditions, and will mean that the innovative abilities that are there in our universities and so many other places will be harnessed and used for the good of all of us. But it also means rights at work. We have some of the least good working conditions across Europe, so we want to give full rights at work from day one. And when the Prime Minister says she's the party of the workers, what kind of party of the workers would allow 6 million people to be paid less than the living wage? What kind of party of the workers would allow 1 million people to work on 0 hours contracts, not knowing what they're going to earn from one week to the other? What party of the workers would charge you for going to a tribunal in order to seek justice for an injustice that's been done to you at work, and threaten you with the costs if you lose the case, thus denying a worker access to justice because they can't afford it? I tell you this, we will do things very differently. £10 an hour, living wage for everybody. An end to 0 hours contracts, and an end to tribunal fees. And a legal aid system worthy of the name, so that people can all get access to justice. So this election is about the issues I've mentioned. It is about how we approach life in the future. So we negotiate with the European Union for tariff-free access to European markets. We protect all the conditions that we've achieved through European Union membership. We guarantee the rights of EU nationals to remain here. And we approach those negotiations not by threats of setting up a tax haven on the shores of Europe, but by developing our economy so that we can develop and trade with others, and that we can bring about rights and justice for everybody within our society. And so our election on June the 8th is our chance. It's our opportunity. We've developed this manifesto from the policies that have come from members of the Labour Party and from trade unions. We've had hundreds of submissions from different environmental organisations, from humanitarian groups, from housing campaigns, from small businesses, from industries, and from trade unions, and loads of people have sent in a lot of stuff. And we've got a team working in our office who've worked incredibly hard over 2 weeks to distill all that down and produce this as a comprehensive policy document that can take us forward to the future. And I thank all of them for the work that they did. But now it's down to us. It's down to us to go out there with confidence, to go out there with enthusiasm, to go out there and realise if we can win this election on June the 8th, and I believe we can and will, then who are we doing it for? We're doing it for those that are suffering. We're doing it to end the isolation of those older people who feel very isolated from society, and we're doing it for a younger generation that they might be able to have a better future for all of us. The alternative is what? 5 years more of a Tory government, cutting services, not caring about all of our children, not caring about the damage they do to our National Health Service, and going on and on, giving out tax relief to those who do not need it. I think we've had quite enough welfare for the wealthy. I think it's time for something different. I've got some absolutely wonderful, brilliant and lovely people in our campaign team, and I love them all dearly. But I hate them when they give me a signal saying it's time to stop, because you've got to go somewhere else. And I'll tell you this, I'm going around the whole country, and the enthusiasm is fantastic. So can I ask all of you to put all your efforts into making sure that Pudsey becomes a Labour gain on June the 8th. Put your efforts into getting Ian elected. Put your efforts into getting a Labour government. Put your efforts into winning for the future. Put your efforts into fairness and justice in our society. Thank you very much indeed. I've got to thank them for holding banners up the whole time.